Ah, Superman. Just the name should get you excited if you're a fan of superheroes in general. The term superhero basically comes from Superman, as he was the first. There were costumed heroes before them, but they were usually just called masked Avengers or mystery men. Normal people who used costumes and gadgets to fight crime. And along came Superman, benevolent, godlike alien from the planet Krypton who fights for truth, justice, and the American way. Superman came at a time when there weren't really any major motion pictures based on superheroes. There was Batman in 1966, but that was more of a madcap comedy based on the TV show. Before that was Superman vs. the Mole Men, but that was also connected to the classic TV show The Adventures of Superman. So this was an example of one of the earliest superhero movies. So no one really knew how to approach it or what to expect. Superman stars Christopher Reeve in the title role, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, and Gene Hackman as the criminal mastermind Lex Luthor. It actually takes quite a few liberties from its source material, but is today considered so influential that many things from the film found its way into the comics themselves. And the director, Richard Donner, even co-wrote a Superman story along with Jeff Johns. If you haven't seen the film, you might be surprised to find that Clark Kent doesn't become Superman until halfway into the movie, and there's a lengthy beginning that takes place on Krypton. It begins with Superman's father, Jor-El, played by Marlon Brando, presiding over the trial of 3 criminals, Zod, Ursa, and Non, and banishing them to the Phantom Zone. You might think that they'll show up later, but this was actually setting up the sequel. Afterwards, Jor-El himself is being scrutinized for his beliefs that the planet is in danger, and the Council of Krypton forces him to promise not to spread his beliefs, and that he and his wife will not leave the planet. But so the Kryptonian culture will survive, Jor-El places his only son, Kal-El, in a rocket and fires him towards Earth, a planet where he will be able to blend in, but will gain godlike powers due to their yellow sun. Kal-El crash lands on Earth as a baby and is taken in by a country couple who name him Clark Kent and raise them as their own. There's a bit of him growing up and dealing with his abilities, which as far as he knows includes strength and vulnerability and speed. He doesn't yet know about his other abilities. After his father dies, he takes one of the crystals from his ship and uses it to create the Fortress of Solitude, where he spends 12 years being educated by a computer program that takes the form of Jor-El. When the 12 years ends, he is Superman. The second half of the movie has him in Metropolis, establishing the Clark Kent identity as a wimpy coward who couldn't possibly be Superman, and using his abilities to help people. He gets the attention of Lois Lane, a reporter who falls madly in love with him, and Lex Luthor, a criminal who sees Superman as a threat to his plans to destroy the West Coast, turning the worthless desert land he had purchased into valuable oceanside real estate. Lex Luthor uses Kryptonite, a mineral harmful to Superman, to incapacitate him, and fires off 2 nuclear rockets, one to destroy a city in New Jersey, and another to destroy the San Andreas Fault. Luthor's female underling, Miss Techmeyer, releases Superman, making him promise to save New Jersey, as her mother lives there. Superman saves Jersey and the West Coast, but is unable to save Lois Lane from being crushed to death in the earthquake. He then does something incredibly stupid and yet awesome looking by flying around the Earth really fast and somehow reversing time to save Lois. Of course, the first thing she does is bitch at him, so you gotta wonder if he thought it was worth it. Lex Luthor winds up in jail, and we get a happy ending. Superman is a great movie. It has a bit of something for everyone. There's a long exposition, but also a lot of action. There's decent special effects, good acting, great music from John Williams, and a serious presentation not previously seen in superhero-themed movies. Some of the scenes and images from the movies have become incredibly iconic, such as Superman drilling into the street, Lois Lane's death scene, and almost anything Lex Luthor does. It's a great film, but it's not without its flaws. Probably the biggest flaw is believability. If you're going to see a Superman movie, you do have to suspend your disbelief to an extent, but this movie's ending sequence is really, really unbelievable. The whole concept of why Lex Luthor used 2 missiles was that even Superman wasn't fast enough to stop them both in time, but after Lois dies, Superman shows his speed to be more like in the comics, as he flies around and around the world super fast to reverse its rotation and reverse time. Of course, I don't see how flying around the world would change its rotation, nor how that would reverse time, a constant in the universe, but I can actually let that go. It's a movie, and it's a cool-looking scene, so who cares if it makes very little sense? Now, what bugs me is that the scene proved that Superman was fast enough to easily stop both missiles, probably before they got anywhere near their targets. My only other gripe has to do with the Kryptonite. After finding out about Superman, Lex Luthor just kind of says, "Hey, I bet chunks of his homeworld landed here, and they're probably deadly to him." How he reached that conclusion is beyond me, but he goes out of his way to obtain the Kryptonite with no real indication that it would actually do anything. Other than that, Superman is a great film that launched a tradition of comic book movies to come out like crazy. Unfortunately, very few of them lived up to Superman, and for the longest time, if a comic book movie came out, it was likely to be bad. Until the past 12 years or so, when good ones were more frequent. Superman itself got plenty of sequels and a spin-off, and since I'm not reviewing any of them, I might as well touch on them briefly. Superman 2 continued the story and picked up on the three villains from the beginning of the first movie, and is for the most part nearly as good as the original, though it's marred by being uneven due to the firing of Richard Donner, though you can get a director's cut now. Superman 3 was more of a comedy with Richard Pryor playing a major character, but as much as I like both Superman and Richard Pryor, it's pretty lame. Superman 4 was really, really assy. The less said about it, the better. More recently, there was Superman Returns, which pretended that 3 and 4 never happened, and while it wasn't as good as the first two, and a bit on the long side, it was decent. There was also Supergirl, which starred Helen Slater as Superman's cousin. I haven't actually seen that one, but I mention it because it's out there. So, the rating. Superman has some really weird and silly moments, especially near the end, but it's a great movie, iconic and worth seeing, so I can't really take off too many points. I'll give it a 9 out of a possible 10.